You're watching I-24 News. I'm Eli Roberts in Tel Aviv, and we have breaking news as we come on the air at this hour. Senior Hamas officials now confirm that the vast majority of those killed on Monday's border clashes were actually Hamas fighters. The group says 50 of the 62 killed were members of Hamas. They were attempting to breach the border fence that separates the Gaza Strip from Israel. Today, the IDF responding, striking a Hamas outpost in the northern Gaza Strip. That strike in response to Palestinian gunfire at IDF troops on the Israeli side of the border. And defense correspondent Daniel Tsemak is in studio now following this breaking story as it unfolds. And Daniel, start off with just how important that statistic is, 50 of the fighters actually coming from Hamas.
Well, it goes to show a little bit of what the Israeli military has been suggesting about these protests and the extent of Hamas's involvement, and that Hamas operatives are indeed present on the ground. On Monday, 8 Hamas militants were killed in an attempted infiltration by IDF troops. That's a large number in and of itself, almost a cell that were trying to infiltrate into Israeli territory with pipe bombs, with explosives. Now we understand, according to this official, it was in a media interview, an Arab media interview, 50 of the 60 or more Palestinians killed in those protests were related to Hamas. That definitely is a very significant development when we're talking about the way the IDF was dealing with these protests, peaceful, not peaceful.
Hamas is always under fire in the way that it handles security in the Gaza Strip. And that's not just coming from Israel, but also the Palestinian Authority has a lot of heavy questions for Hamas. What does it say about Hamas's position in terms of security in the Gaza Strip now that we're learning that so much of this provocation was coming from Hamas leadership?
Well, it furthers the notion that Hamas is playing at least somewhat of a role in these protests. There are some that suggest that Hamas is not playing a role, is not leading these protests, is not facilitating it. Here we understand 50, that's a very large number. That's a large number in one day. Mind you, there were some 40,000, but Hamas is present along the border. It's visible from the Israeli side. There are several observation posts of Hamas. On any given day, you can look over the border, zoom in, and see these different Hamas posts. So they're definitely present on the ground. That's something that has been known, and this large number maybe just further shows that fact.
Let's talk about the international outrage, because Israel has been the subject of condemnation since Monday when these border clashes did break out. But now it turns out that the assumption that those people who were killed were not actually peaceful. And that's something that Israel has been talking about since the clashes happened, even showing video. It made no difference. Talk about the international reaction or what we should expect.
Well, it seems as though it further suggests that Israel was targeting, maybe more so than the international community seems to think, people that were not necessarily peaceful, maybe had other motives. That said, 12, let's say, it depends what the number actually is. There are still some people that are unaccounted for that might have been Palestinians that were not armed, that did not intend to inflict harm or violence, that were killed. But it does show that there were instances of terror activity within these protests, and there are countless examples of that recently with these infiltrations, most notably on Monday, that 8 militant group of Hamas militants that tried to enter Israel. That was a very big point that the Israeli military is trying to focus on, and this is what the Israeli spokesperson's unit, the Israeli military spokesperson's unit, is trying to say, is that Israel is not facing a mass crowd of peaceful protesters that are just trying to get necessarily human rights and things of that nature, but also, at least also, a terror motive by the sovereign entity of Hamas, which is the ruling government inside the Gaza Strip.
Daniel, one final question very quickly. 8 of those killed were children. One of those killed was actually an infant who was taken to the border, killed by tear gas. Why were those kids at the border?
Well, we can't really say for sure. A lot of these details are hard to necessarily classify as black and white. But what we do know is that there were non-terror-related Palestinians involved in these protests. There were people that were not trying to cause any harm or violence that were probably there out of the 40,000. There were also buses that literally took Gazans from city centers into the Gaza border region to participate in these protests.
All right, Daniel, and we will continue to update you as we learn more about this breaking news today. You're watching I-24 News. Have a good day.